Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Time, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 80 of Breaking Step. Breaking Step. Get it off! Jekyll yelled, his stone arm in the large dog's mouth. Get it off me! You know, Miss said, essence forming into an arrow as he pulled the string of his bow. You are strong enough to punch it off you. He loosed the arrow, and it exploded on the dog's side, sending it tumbling off the fighter. Jekyll scrambled away as he got to his feet. Tibs stepped between the growling dog and Jackal. Bad dog! No treat for you! Its head snapped up, and the growling itched. Tibs thought he saw confusion in its eyes. Then it lounged, and Tibs swung, stepping aside. He added filigrees of dew to the edge of the ice sword, and he added sharpness. And the added sharpness caused it to cut its muzzle and head off. Half its muzzle and head off with hardly any resistance. It turned to face him on landing. A real dog would have died. One of the first dogs he'd encountered on the floor would have too, but this loss only diminished its essence slightly. Even its growl wasn't affected. It ran at him, and Tibbs smashed his shield into the remain of its head, staggering it, then pinned it to the ground with his sword. It still didn't die, but while it struggled to get itself free, Tibbs formed another sword and cut it apart until it crumbled away. They're tougher, he commented, absorbing both swords. And bigger, Don said. And sneakier, Jekyll snarled. Within blocks of leaving the plaza where they'd eaten, one had jumped out of an alley at the fighter. Then one had burst out of a door to reach him, and this one had jumped on him from a roof. Is it me? Mez said, or has the dungeon picked up on Jackal's love for those animals? I don't like them. Jackal looked at the rip in his arm and armor, both of which were stone. This is going to take weeks to have repaired. Buy a new one, Don said, while Tibbs formed a purity weave to deal with the injury. But I like this one, Jackal replied. It's the one I've worn since Tib burned the last one off me. And now he was responsible for Jekyll losing another armor. Even if his was in worse condition, at least Tibbs's armor would repair itself over time. Have you considered that this may be the dungeon's attempt at instructing you to your unwise habit of throwing yourself at your opposition? They're throwing themselves at me. Okay. Yeah, this needs to be flipped because this is Jackal speaking, and because I have Tibbs's action here, unless, I could, if I want to keep this like that. But, yeah. There we go. So that makes it clear it's Jekyll speaking while keeping the action there. They're throwing themselves at me, Jekyll sighed in relief after Tibbs applied the weave. Where's the next building? Over there. He motioned towards the oddity in his sense, and they were on the move again. He didn't know what it was, since it registered as a hole in the essence, but it was the closest thing that wasn't like the rest of the buildings on this floor. They checked houses, most of which had nothing of interest other than the occasional essence-laden food on plates like offering for them. which Tibs and Don didn't allow Jackal to touch. At one, a family attacked them, which included a child that took advantage of Tibbs's surprise at its presence and how odd a child looked when gray and squished down like all the people that were part of the city to grow its fingers into claws and scored one gash in his side, and then Tibbs dispatched it, cursing himself for never realizing that Stowe wasn't limited to making adult golem people. More dogs attacked, and Tibbs figured there was something random about their placement, while the golem people were limited by the roles they played. Guards patrolled so they could be avoided. Thugs snuck out of the alleys so they could stay away from those, and families only came from houses. The shops yielded loot and the occasional shopkeeper and customer to protect them. Yes! Jackal exclaimed after one such fight as he shoved amulets, jeweled daggers, and necklaces in his pouch, leaving the pieces of armor for the others to put in their pack. Are you really going to put all that in there? No, you're really going to put all that in there, aren't you? Don said, motioning to the other displays. Don't you want the loot? Jekyll replied, adding bracelet to it. Don't you want to keep your pouch? The sorcerer replied. They can't know it's magical. But they know you're greedy, which is why you guys are carrying the armor. They know we're going to sell that. You mean this? Mez showed an intricately detailed, not detailed, etched showed a leather armband an intricate design. Tibbs, how much do you think Darren will give for this? A few silver, 2 and 0 at most. One of the artisans might give more because it looks good. And that necklace Jackal is shoving in his pouch? Tibbs snorted without bothering to look. Hundreds of silvers. He knows a lot of people who like jewels. Darren isn't going to tell anyone what he buys from us, Jekyll said. But won't the guard think it strange, Don said, that Quigley leaves his run with enough jewelry to please a king and all we found are common armor? Won't they question how the great Jackal couldn't manage to find the good loot? Or maybe they'll start wondering if it isn't more that you found a way to hide loot from them? They can't tell the pouch is magical, Jekyll repeated in a tone of, why aren't you getting that? Until they reach in to check what's there. The fighter stared at the sorcerer. Is jaw working, but no sound escaping? Fear, but... Okay, I've got two buts here. The fighter stared at the fighter. Is jaw working, but no sound escaping? Working silently. Working silently. But fear was building in his eyes. That's why we have to carry most of it, Don said. But you know they're going to take it, Jekyll protested. It's not just magical things they keep. It's anything they can make good coins with. And that's the best coin. They're my coins. He clutched the necklace to his chest. Only if they don't realize you're cheating them. You have to know they need to think they're scamming you if you want your scam to work. Jackal looked at Tibbs for support, but he shrugged. I can't help that he's right. Fine, Jekyll grumbled and put the necklace in the pouch. He can have the rest. Then he lunged at a large red jewel in a gold brooch. But I'll take it. I'll take that. The nothing in the essence was a building in the center of a large plaza, which, much like the first one, but only in looks. Unlike the other, where he could sense something blocking his sense, here, the more or less circular building the more or less circular building simply wasn't there, according to his sense. Are any of you creeped out by this? Tibbs asked, approaching it. There couldn't be something that wasn't made of essence. Essence was everything. Jekyll reached for the stone wall, but his hand stopped before touching it. Don, tell me this is some sort of enchantment. The sorcerer hesitated. I've never read anything like this. Even that stone your father brought to the city felt like something. I mean, it pushed our essence away from it, so it generated an essence that did that. This? The essence that crosses the wall just ends. He shuddered. So the wall keeps you from sensing inside the building? Nez asked. No, it's not coming back. But if you can't sense it, you can't call it back, Jekyll said with an edge to his voice. But I can etch instructions into it to return, Don snapped. You'll show me how to do that, Tibs said, interrupting Jekyll's reply. Don took a breath. What do you sense, Tibs? Nothing. There's a hole in the essence where the building is. The wall felt like the stone it looked like. It was the gray of stone, cool to the touch, but there was no essence there to explain how it existed. Was this the room Stu had talked about? It said the building was still there, but the inside was gone. Is that what it would be like to his sense? Only, hadn't Kenny said Stu had moved the room out of the way until they figured out what had happened? And Stu wouldn't leave something he didn't understand that could hurt runners. He had to understand it to make it something that forced runners to get stronger. There's a door, Mass called from where his walk around the building took him. Open it, Jekyll said, reaching him, Tibbs on his heel and Don and Cumdor arriving last. I'm not touching that, the archer replied before Tibbs could veto the idea. You want to see in, you open it. No, Tibbs stepped before Jekyll. I'm opening it. The door looked like any of the stone doors he'd seen on the other buildings. Native to the floor. Stone bars held in place but with metal strips. He could even scratch the stone and metal with the point of a knife. The only thing of note was the handle. There to let someone pull the door shut. There might be some trap in it, but he couldn't sense it or anything. The door resisted his initial push and only opened a crack when he pushed harder. He stepped away, waiting for something to happen. When nothing did, he moved close and went to push it some more, only to pull his hand back as soon as it crossed the threshold. He looked at it and confirmed it was fine, then tried to understand what had happened. His hand had still been there, he sensed it and the essence in it, but the essence in his glove had vanished. It hadn't been the pushback from the green stone that prevented him from pushing his essence out of himself. This made anything past the surface of his skin simply no longer there. He put his hand in and moved it. It behaved as it should, but the lack of surface essence was disconcerting. He pushed it further in, then out, as he lost sense of some of the reserves in his bracers. The reserves registered again, but not the essence it had contained. Air and earth were drained. He hurried to refill air, breathed easier when it did. Whatever this was hadn't broken them. This empties amulets, Tibbs said, considering how to go about pushing the door open further. How quickly? Don asked. As fast as it took me to pull my hand out, he replied. May stepped back. So that thing destroys the essence of anything in it? Does anyone have an item they're willing to hand over for the test? Don asked. No. Mess pulled his bow to his chest. Not that, the sorcerer said as Tib formed his sword. Something small that you won't miss. If it's magic, we're going to miss it, Jekyll said. Tibs moved the sword toward the door, but anything that crossed the threshold vanished and didn't reform when he pulled it out. The essence just stopped as if cut by a knife. We're going to have to reach in to open it further, Dawn said. Maz, I'm not doing it. I didn't think your armor was enchanted. It isn't, the archer replied. Then I'll hold your bow while you... I'm not getting close to that. Jekyll reached past Tibbs and gave the door a shove that opened it. There's a chest! Then, Tibbs' understanding of what the weave... Then Tibbs' understanding that the weave in his glove was fine, even if it had been inside the building, was disrupted by the fighter stepping inside. Get out of there! This is weird, Jekyll said, looking at his hand that had turned back to its usual tanned hue. I'm still suffused with earth, but it's not doing its usual thing. Jekyll, get out of there, Tibbs ordered. But it's not doing anything else, the fighter replied, looking around. Breathing his anger down, since screaming wouldn't do any good, Tibbs did the same. Okay, I need to specify, since it's been pointing out that it feels like Tibbs enters the room. Tibbs leaned forward to do the same. Unlike the other building, this one only had the chest in it. The chest, set partially behind the odd column in the center. It was a series of rings of different... Okay, it's not a series. I said 3... It's 5 rings. Stack it up each other up to Jekyll's thigh. Okay, yeah, this is not really going to work because if there's only 5, the tapering. This is going to be a new phrase. So the bottom one. The bottom one is slightly smaller than one atop it. All right. Okay, that works. It's probably going to need tweaking. Unlike the other building, this one had a chest set partially behind the odd column in the center. It was 5. Well, okay, it can't. Okay, actually, it can't be a column because it doesn't reach the top. The odd stack of discs. The okay, I don't need odd. The stack of discs in the center. 5 of them. And this is how, I've written it now. I'm realizing I need to change it because while correct, it's not clean. 5 of them. Because they're not rings. They're from where he's looking at, they're discs because he can't see inside. And ultimately they are discs. 5 of them. And that's where I'm going to, with the bottom one slightly smaller than the one atop it. Then the other 3 tapered until the top disc was the size and thickness of the fighter's stone-filled head. The chest was positioned in such a way that it could only be accessed by "It's up!" Jackal was already next to the chest, brushing the largest ring. Before Tibs could let out the discs. Before Tibs could let out the sigh, the discs spun once. Then the nothingness from inside the room was all around them, stretching. He had no idea how far, since the abyss cursed thing removed all essence. And that concludes chapter 80 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story as well as the other in the series, they are up for free on Royal Road. If you want to support me and read ahead of Royal Road, that is on my Patreon, where we're about 20 chapters ahead. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.